Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Super 7, a show where we speak to a current or former rider and ask him to give us his dream team, his ultimate lineup, his Super 7. My name is John McGilvery.
And I am Liam Rudden, and as ever, we have a very special guest lined up tonight who's picked 7 riders to make up a dream team, and it's some dream team tonight. John, tell us, who's our special guest?
Yes, tonight we have a 2014 British Under-21 grass track champion, a World Long Track team champion, a 2 times European grass track champ, and a 4 times British Masters grass track champion. We are speaking to James Shanes. James, thank you for joining us and welcome to Super 7.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Hopefully I won't be too much of a pain.
I'm sure you'll be fine. First and foremost, how are you getting on and how are you surviving this whole lockdown situation?
Yeah, we're surviving. I mean, I'm trying to work hard. I've luckily found a job with a company called Pool Bay, driving lorries, and they were stupid enough to trust me to drive the Class 1. So, yeah, no, it's going well. I mean, it's annoying that we can't ride, and it's hard to try and plan for the possibility that we are riding. So, you know, the plans that are going on behind the scene of what happens if we are riding, what happens if we're only doing a handful of meetings, what happens if we're not riding at all. So, yeah, I mean, we're surviving. Me and my partner Lauren have sort of, you know, got on with it while we still can work. We're making the most of it. So.
You were one of the fortunate ones to turn a wheel in anger last season, albeit through your long track and a couple of grass track meetings as well. Are you missing being on a Speedway bike? Yeah,
I'm missing just being on a bike in general. You know, it sucks. I mean, you can't even go to the motocross track and have a little play now. There's nothing at all. So, yeah, I mean, you know, the garage kind of looks like just empty, really. There's nothing going on there. The bike's all sat there ready to go. But, yeah, I mean, we're missing it. I'll get out on my push bike every now and again when the weather plays ball. So, still get a bit of two-wheel action.
James, you do long track, you do grass track, and you do speedway. I've never been to a grass track meeting. I've never been to a long track meeting. Tell us, what's the difference in the disciplines?
Not a lot, really. Obviously, grass track and long track are predominantly on a lot bigger tracks. And instead of sort of 4 riders, we can ride anything up to 12. A lot of the time in England, we do have 12 riders on the track. And most time in Europe, they sort of go up to maybe about 8. But yeah, that's really the main difference. There's a lot bigger tracks. The bikes have rear suspension and a gearbox, and so they're slightly longer. And riding lots of different surfaces. I mean, you can go from riding on a shell-based track to being on grass, then being on sand. So, you know, there's a lot of variance in it, but the fundamentals of the sport are pretty much identical to Speedway.
And that must make you quite an all-rounder then. So does being able to ride on all the different tracks, being basically a motorcyclist, does that help when it comes to your Speedway riding?
Not really. Speedway is such a discipline on its own. I mean, where the tracks are on the slicker side and it's very sort of close quarter racing, it doesn't really help that I'm a grass rider unless the track gets really deep or really wet or something like that. But the Speedway helps my long track when we go to sort of like the Herksheim and Mould or some of these big shell-based tracks. So yeah, it's a bit tit for tat, but yeah, it's one of them things really. It's about what you can ride and when you can ride it.
James, I was reading up a bit and things, and I saw that you'd had a really bad accident in 2019, which saw you end up when one of your injuries was a bruised heart. Now, I've watched Falkirk lose 3 Scottish Cup finals, so I know all about bruised hearts. But, you know, how on earth, you know, what? Can you tell me how they diagnose a bruised heart? That must be horrific.
I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you how they diagnosed it. I mean, the list of injuries was quite extensive. So, yeah, I couldn't tell you how they bruised how my heart was bruised or how they knew it was bruised. But you know, it meant in ways it was kind of good that my heart was bruised because it put my surgery for my back 48 hours while they checked my heart was fine. So it gave them time to plan a very good surgery on my back, which meant I wasn't going to lose any motion or any sort of mobility in my back. So, yeah, I honestly don't know how they diagnosed it. I can't remember a lot of the time in hospital. I just remember there's a lot of machines and scans and stuff, but yeah, I couldn't tell you.
Wow. Well, it's scary stuff, but you're here to tell the tale, and that's the most important thing as well. So let's get into your Super 7 then. What's been the thinking behind the guys that are in your Super 7?
Most of them are idols. They're people that I've idolised, and there's a couple of people there that are friends. So, yeah, it's a very weird one. The order's not really any good. There's people at reserve that probably really shouldn't be at reserve. But it's kind of how they just popped into my head. So, yeah.
I don't think too many people take the actual format of the 1 to 7 in terms of he's at number 7, no chance. But it's getting 7 riders that are there that mean something to you, or maybe even inspired you. And like you say, you've got friends in there as well, and it's important in any sport, any walk of life, to have people along beside you that you can class as friends to help you along in what can be difficult times as well.
Yeah.
So we'll start with your number 1 then. And I've got a funny feeling this may come from your long track side of things. But who have you got then at number 1?
I picked Simon Wigg. So, yeah, just an absolute legend of a rider, and an out-and-out all-star really of the sport. So, and to have him as a number 1 was the right choice for me. I mean, I'm chasing his record for Masters wins. I think I've only got 2 more Masters wins, and then I'd beat record. So, he is just a legend, and if he was around today, the sport would be completely different. So, if there's anyone that I can sort of model myself on, it has to be him, really.
So Simon left us at the age of 40. He obviously suffered from a brain tumour, and I was very young to go. How aware were you of him growing up? How did you become aware of Simon Wigg?
I wasn't really. He died, I think, the year I started racing. So sort of didn't really know much about him when I was young, but obviously as I got older, and my dad raced and stuff, so he sort of taught me, like, spoke about him and showed me videos of him, and just and there's several people in the ACU, Dickie Staff, one of the ACU people, mechanic for him. So the stories I hear about him, it just it's just from people and watching videos and stuff about him, and just how much of a genuinely nice person he was. So yeah.
Have you learned anything from watching those videos?
Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, I watched videos from him before I went to my first season, the long track GPs or some of the tracks. Obviously, I've never been to any of them, so watched videos of him at like Waldorf and Hancock, some place like this, just try and get an idea of how to ride it. And where he was such a clean, precise ride, it was very good to watch him where to go and how to do it. So he was quite a big help.
Yeah, I think Simon was a bit of a trailblazer when it came to professionalism and bringing himself forward as well, and saying, look, this isn't about just jumping on a bike and riding it. You need to work hard, you need to be fit, you need to present yourself well. I take it you've taken those kind of things from him and said, well, look, that's what it takes to be a world champion at any sport. That's what I need to do. Yeah,
I mean, he was always sort of pushing the boundaries of the sport. I mean, the talks of him he was in wind tunnels and stuff like this, trying to get aerodynamics for his bike right, and just little things like that. How sort of all the attention to detail and everything had to be perfect on the bike at all times. And I sort of took that on board. As I've got older and understood the mechanics of the bike more, I've taken it on board with the guy that builds my frames, Roger Taylor, RTS. Taken long conversation with him, or changing my bike a little bit to make it work better, and the same with Tornado of engines, to try and really be, not just sitting on the bike and riding it, really understanding why my bike does what it does, and always trying to be the professional and the person everyone likes is always sort of something I wanted to be.
It's interesting. I don't think we've ever heard anyone talk about wind tunnels when it comes to getting anything more out of their bike. But it's funny you say, you're learning about the bike. I remember there was a rider came to Edinburgh, I won't name him, but he got on his bike, he got off it, and it was like, he couldn't express to his mechanics what the problem was. It was just like, yeah, it's not going fast enough, fix it.
Yeah.
And made a cut like, is this guy surely needs to know what his bike's doing and how it's responding and things like that. So it's interesting to hear that, you know in your head, you need to pick this up and you need to learn that.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I've had the opportunity the last sort of 3 or 4 winters to go over to Germany with Friedhelm Tornado and actually build engines. And I've built several of my own engines and gone through the whole process of taking it, like from stripping it to rebuilding it, added a few bits, made a few tweaks here, and even throwing in a few ideas of my own that I've come up with and worked with him to do it. And makes it really good because when I'm riding the bike, you can know that, like with an engine, you can go, that one isn't right for him. I need to change whatever it is. And then I can go back to him and say, right, this needs to have this and this changed. And it speeds the whole process up. And I just like knowing how everything works.
Okay, at number 2 in year 7, you have a very popular rider. He's appeared in a few 1 to 7s. He's from Australia. He's a 3-time world champion. Tell us who you have at number 2.
Jason Crump. Again, just another a legend. I've met him several times through the years. He came to a youth presentation at Swindon Youth Grasstrack Club. When he rode for Swindon, he came to the presentation with his family, and he was just a normal bloke. And he, again, a phenomenal rider, very, very clean, very, very professional, and just a nice person.
James, how old were you when you started riding? And as a youngster, how valuable is that time that these legends, if you like, spend with you?
Priceless, absolutely priceless. I mean, the time that they give you just to take time to talk to you, even if it's giving you no advice, it just really makes you feel part of the sport and how much of a family it is. That the likes of Jason Crump will take the time to speak to me, and I was only sort of 6 or 7 at the time, and took the time to chat to not only me but everyone there. Got the time of day to be spoken to, and it was brilliant. And the advice they give you is priceless, and it's something that I've taken on into my sort of own sort of career of giving advice on to some like the riders that are following me up through the ranks. Like there's Jake Mulford, who's just sort of started out on Speedway, and Cameron Taylor, who's on the grass track, that I've given bits of advice to here and there, just to keep them heading in the right direction so they don't stray off the path trying to find something, when if they turn right it was going to be straight there. So yeah, it's valuable.
Yeah, we spoke quite a bit about how the Speedway family, if you like, whether they be world champions or juniors, everyone seems to be on a fair level within the sport. And you find that when you hear stories about guys like Jason Crump who have got time for everyone. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to meet Jason a couple of times, and yeah, he'll talk away, and he's such a nice, level-headed guy.
Yeah, extremely.
Brilliant. Number 3. Then we're going to the other side of the world. We've been to Australia. We're heading to America, and it's another world champion and another a 4-time world champion this time. Who have you gone for at number 3?
Greg Hancock. For the same reasons as everyone else, really. Very, very good, very, very good rider, very professional, very clean. And I had the chance to meet him several times now, and I was at Glasgow once, and I was struggling during the meeting, and he was there, and completely out of the blue came over and said, look, right, at the end of the meeting, you're going out for 4 laps, so I'm going to come out there. And no one asked him, no one did anything. He did it off his own back, came down on the track, helped me with a few little things that I was struggling with, came back up in the pits, and spoke to me about them. And he really took the time to explain every little detail. And I can't thank him enough for that little bit of help that I needed. When I was fairly new to Speedway. So yeah,
I think that's absolutely incredible that he does that, and he just off his own back. I think if I hear any more nice stories about Greg Hancock and the story, I think I'm going to fall in love with the guy. He's just a legend, an absolute diamond.
Yeah, he is the ultimate nice guy. And he's just to take the time. No one asked him, just to come over off his own back and just do it. I can't turn around expecting it to be, someone completely different, and it's him. And I was kind of starstruck that oh, you come over and just, spoken to me and told me all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I was completely starstruck by that.
Brilliant.
Well, from an American legend to a British legend, and a man that I'm surprised has not featured in more Super Sevens. He was a 1976 world champion. He spent his entire career at Bellevue. Who have you got at number 4?
Peter Collins. Never saw him ride personally, obviously, but I've watched. There's the race of him and Nigel Major at Herxheim. This is just an amazing race to watch, and he was a gritty rider. He was, always had his teeth stuck in, and if there was a battle on the track, he was 9 times out of 10 in it. So, that was absolutely amazing. And I've met him several times on the continent with the long track. So I think the first time I met him, it was at Calais Ferry Port, and he was shouting at me and waving for me from across the queue of security. So yeah, I've bumped into him several times abroad, and again, plenty of advice from how to ride to, where's good to go get food at some of these, European places. So yeah, he's a great laugh.
James, when you meet these legends, do you get starstruck?
A little bit, yeah. With Peter Collins, I didn't even realise it was him who was at the ferry port, and he was shouting, like, I think it was him and James Hartley were hanging out the van shouting at us across the car park, and we were on the same ferry, and he came over and started speaking, and then Dad was like, "Do you know who that is?" And he's told me who it was, and I was like, I couldn't believe, just come over out the blue and said, "Oh, we saw you at, I think it must have been Herxheim or somewhere that we were riding like that weekend." And came over, had a chat and pointed a few things out, and he said, "Next time, where's your next meeting?" And I'm going to that one. So yeah, I bump into him quite a lot now, so it's quite fun.
James, how much is your dad responsible for your choice of sport?
Massively. He was riding at the time when I started. He only retired for about 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, we raced together for a year in the 250s on grass track. So he was a massive influence in.
And who got the better? Who got the better, father or son?
Me. He claims he knocked it into neutral at the start, but I'm not letting him have that, because he claims it all the time that, I knocked into neutral, that's fine, that's why. He also fell off in the final. And I came back around to see if it was okay, and he goes, "Well, better finish the race, don't worry about me." And I said, "I already have. I've already finished the race, and I'm now coming back to you." I got my priorities straight. Yeah.
I love you, Dad, but I want to beat you.
Yeah. I saw him fall off. I was going down the back at one stage. I was going down one straight, looking over my shoulder to see where he was, and he was sort of going down, looking across to see how I was doing. So there was, we got told off for looking at each other, not where we were meant to be going.
To your 5th member of your Super 7, and I think this could be the first time he's been mentioned on this show. Another 4-time world champion. Who have we got this time, James?
Barry Briggs. Quite understated, I think. He was a good rider. Again, clean, a nice guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of times with Paul, and had a long chat with him at the Paul Gala dinner a couple of years ago. So he's a lovely guy. Lots of knowledge there, and I think he's very understated. So yeah, that's why I put him in.
Stated is an excellent way to this game, and something that I've never heard him being called before. I remember him coming over to do the Golden Greats meetings, and going to Powder Hall years ago to see that. My dad, a good bit older than me, very excited to see that and see some of the riders, and came across as a really nice guy, and someone who I've been surprised we haven't seen more of in our 1-7s. Do you know any idea why that would be?
I don't know. I think it's just because he is understated. No one really sort of talks about him, but to be a full-time world champion, you've got to be a good rider. There's no 2 ways about it. So he is a nice guy. I've had quite a long chat with him several times now. I've sort of seen him a few places. So he was a very good rider, a very sort of competitive rider, and again, just a really gutsy sort of person. Was always up for getting his teeth sunk in a good fight. So
James, you're one of the new guard of British Speedway, but looking at your team here, you know, so many of the classics and what have you that you've chosen ahead of maybe more contemporary riders. Is it something that you enjoy, looking back and discovering these old riders and learning the history and who was what and who was where?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the sport is what it is now because of these people. So, you know, a lot of people speak, you know, the good days and the heydays, everything like this, but you know, that did happen. And back in the height of the sport, you know, Peter Collins and Simon Wigg, Briggs, all these sort of riders were the best of their days, and they were making the sport evolve as they were doing it. So a lot of what we have now is to do with these guys. And you know, I've always been into sort of the history of things and why the sport is how it is now. So you know, I enjoy watching, like reminiscing almost, and watching older videos and things like that. So yeah, I do quite enjoy doing that.
Good to hear.
Liam, sorry, I'm going to steal one of your questions that you've asked in a previous show.
Go on then.
James, if you could ride in any decade, because I'm very interested, you're picking guys here who rode in the 70s, 60s, things like that. Is there a decade or an era that you would have liked to have ridden in, knowing how much you dig back into all this?
Probably the 80s, I would say. Yeah, I think the 80s was, you know, the sport was maybe not at its highest, but it was going places. And some of the videos I've seen of, you know, pictures at Poole, and the stadium was absolutely packed. You know, you can't fit another person into the place, and seeing the photo like that, and then, you know, going to Poole now, and, you know, don't get me wrong, there's a good crowd there, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. And, you know, just to be able to ride in that sort of atmosphere and be the frontier of the sport, having an impact in, you know, being the first one to go laid down, or, you know, bringing out the monoshock, all this sort of stuff, you know, to be sort of involved in that would have been a great experience.
I think it's always great when you see the stadiums years ago. I've just been speaking to Ronnie Allen, the referee today, who started off as a bike pusher in the 60s when there was 10,000 people at a meeting, 20,000 people at a meeting. And when you see the old pictures of that, I get a buzz from it. I take it must give you an even bigger buzz knowing what is actually happening on the track.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can hear the fans when you're sort of riding out to the start line, and it really gives you sort of like a buzz. And I've been to some of these party grasstrack meetings and some of the big Speedway meetings when you get like the crowd where they're really sort of like into the meeting, and, you know, they're screaming and they're shouting, and you're riding out to the start line, you can feel it, and it just gives you that, puts you on edge a little bit. And at the end of the race, like, you know, if you've gone and got a 5-1 or whatever, and the fans are, you know, absolutely loving it, they're cheering and shouting and stuff, and, you know, so, you know, you play to them a little bit and they play back to you. It's such an enjoyable experience, and it gives you such a buzz, and it makes that win or whatever you just done in that race feel 10 times better than what it actually should do, because they're sort of just carrying you on it, and they put you on a high, and that just carries you through for the rest of the day, really.
Does that put a smile on your face?
Yeah, I love it. I love a crowd.
You're smiley racing, aren't you, Doc?
Yeah, I love a crowd to interact, whether they're sort of booing me, like I've been at some tracks and they booed me and stuff like that. So I just turn around and, you know, wind them up a little bit more, or, you know, the crowd's really.
Yeah, listen, Liam's terrible for doing that when these riders come up to Edinburgh, mate. You know, he's a nice guy.
He's the one that boos me. Yeah, you know, it makes it's at the end of the day, it's a show, and that's what I believe. That's how I've always looked at it. It is a show, and my job is to put a show on. So I'll do that by any means. You know, like me and the Brummy Bear have got such a good relationship now that, you know, if I'm not riding and I'm on like the track somewhere, you can guarantee me and him are doing something really stupid and messing around somewhere. That's sort of like the normal thing that goes on. And, you know, you got to get the younger people involved in the sport. And if it's just four blokes going around on a track, at the end of the day, it doesn't appeal to all the younger kids. So, you know, I want to bring in, you know, the 10-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, whatever, so they can enjoy the sport for, you know, the 50 years that some of the older people have enjoyed the sport for. So, you know, that's my job.
Well, James, that's great to hear, because John and I have lamented in the past that the characters of the past very seldom get replaced, and there's less and less over the years. So if you can bring a bit of that back, that showmanship back, then that's fantastic.
I mean, when I was at Kentwood with the late Danny Ayres, the crowd used to love it. If me and him were in the same race and we got a 5-1, you didn't know what was going to happen. You know, all sorts of things happened I can remember heat 15, he's gone running up into the crowd. You know, it's just things like that. And the sport needs characters. You know, whether you're the villain or whether you're the fan favourite, it doesn't matter. Everyone loves a villain, everyone loves a fan favourite. You just have to, entertain them.
They were saying that, Shane Parker was telling us that, wasn't he, John? He loved winding up, especially the Edinburgh fans, when he was riding at Glasgow, and it was all just pantomime, really, at the end of the race.
Yeah, I don't think James is up for riding around in a big nappy like Shane Parker did at Edinburgh.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Maybe don't go that far.
Oh no, you give me an idea now.
You better watch John on Royalties if you do that. Actually, Shane will be after John for suggesting. Listen, at number 6, I was going to say you've got a new up-and-coming Speedway rider, but actually he's already a champion in his own right. He's from Germany. Who have you got at number 6?
I got Lucas Fienhage.
You bottled that, Liam, because yours.
He's a great kid, really is. The first time I met him, he was only about, 14, and he was the British translator at one of the 250 Gold Cup meetings, and he speaks brilliant English, and he was a translator for us. So I got to know him then, and obviously as things progressed, we started racing together, and this year he won the long track world title, fully deserved it. I mean, he rode his heart out, and he is a great rider, a great guy, and I believe he's going to do things in the sport. So he's definitely someone to watch and a good friend.
Yeah, and you were racing with him at the end of last year, weren't you? You were racing against him.
Yeah, I rode with him in the long track series, and he was head and shoulders above the rest. He went to Poland and he scored well. He's now got himself a first league team, all this sort of stuff. So, he's great. I think we must talk pretty much every day on Snapchat and social media and stuff like that. He's always, dropping me a message of something stupid that's going on, and I'm normally somewhere driving somewhere and waiting for someone to do something normally. So it's always a bit fun.
Do you think we'll see him riding in the UK?
I've tried. I've tried to get him over several times. So keep watching. I'm going to twist his arm. I don't care. I'll drag him over if I have to. But yeah, hopefully he'll come over one day.
There's not been too many German Speedway riders that have come over to the UK. Am I right in saying certainly more long track and grass track is perhaps more prevalent in that part of the world than, say, Speedway?
Yeah, long track and grass track is a big thing in Germany. They hold, they have the Father's Day Internationals. There's about 3 meetings across Germany. One's normally the first round of the GPs, and there's 2 other meetings. And they've said at Herxheim for one of the meetings we're at, there's 25,000 people there. Wow. And Father's Day is a day off over there. So yeah, it's a day off. Every meeting is normally like the village fete or something. So they have the village fete in the morning, and then the meetings happen in the afternoon, or it's a big part of the village or the town. You drive into the town, it says welcome to wherever you are, and there's a poster for the meeting that's happening that weekend. They really get behind it over there. So it is a big thing. Speedway's picking up over there as well quite a lot, and there's a lot of young riders that are quite handy.
Yeah, it's a big country as well. He's our first German rider, I think, on our Super 7 as well. And I don't think between one thing as well, you mentioned Barry Briggs, going back to him and Ivan Major. For 2 guys who have won so many world titles, aren't guys that we've seen a lot on Super 7. So we should probably apologise to the people in New Zealand, Liam. See, we love you. You know, we're very jealous of your COVID-free country.
Yeah.
So we'll go to your last rider. I was going to say next door to New Zealand, but I wouldn't like to swim it. We're going to Australia for another world champion. Who it is that's completing your lineup?
Jason Doyle. You know, he is such a determined person. I mean, when I was at Poltech for the Speedway Light Apprenticeship, he was sort of involved in it as well. Like, he came to a couple of our training sessions, and for a bloke that's 6 foot something and to weigh, you know, not much more than 65 kilos, is just phenomenal. He's an absolute machine. And I can remember being at Swindon and he was on crutches. You know, he was crutching himself to the bike, getting on the bike, riding, and he was getting pushed back to the pits, then like hopping off to the sit down. And, you know, it's just that mindset. And I remember being in a training session with him, and, you know, he was that determined to go that one bit better. You had no choice. You know, you were hanging out your ass and ready to sort of give up, but he just gave that last little bit, you know, every time. And I mean, I rode with him at Swindon as well. So, you know, he's just a determined machine, really.
These guys must really give you, I don't know, inspire you when you see them, and especially when you see them going, because, I mean, he's not old, but he's not young either now. He's 35,
yeah.
Jason. So, I mean, is Speedway something that you would like to be still doing at 35? I mean, some of the riders are older than that. Would you like to still be doing it when you're 40? Is it something you'd like to do for the long term?
Yeah, I mean, you know, riding is my life. It's pretty much all I've ever done. It's all I've ever known. So, you know, if I could ride until, you know, I'm 40, you know, amazing. And, you know, grass track is definitely an older man sport as well. I mean, there's a German called Bernd Diener who's, I believe he's turning 60, or he has turned 60. And on the right day at the right track, he'll make anyone look silly. You know, I'm hoping I'm going to be him soon. Well, I say soon, in a few years' time.
Yeah, you've got a few decades to go
got
yet.
a couple of weeks, yeah.
You've got it yet, mate.
Yeah, it's something I love doing, and it's such a community thing, and it's just a family. It's a whole way of life, a whole way of living. I couldn't imagine doing anything else, really.
There's another guy over in Russia, a British guy who rides in the Russian Ice Speedway, and I'm sure he's in his 50s.
Yeah, I think he is. He did do grass track for a while. Me and Dad went out to the Ice Nations a couple of years ago, I think. Last year must have been. I can't remember whenever it was. To Berlin and watched it, and he was there. And, yeah.
I mean, I think it would take me. Sorry, it would take me to have a go on I've had to go on a speedway bike, albeit at 250. It would take me to have a go on a grass track and a long track. But see that ice speedway, you stick that.
Yeah.
Not a chance to even consider it.
I heard stories of them. They sleep in their vans. They'll be in, you know, the outback of Sweden somewhere. It's -40. They're sleeping in the van, and they're just a complete different breed of people. It's great to watch. I wouldn't like to meet any of them down a dark alley anywhere, because they look like the sort of people that, you know, they're not afraid. I can put it that way. But yeah, it's nice, but not for me. Definitely not for me.
I don't see us having a nice speedway podcast coming anytime soon, Liam.
Well, they did have ice speedway at Murrayfield Stadium, John.
Oh,
back in the 70s. Yeah, they had a few meetings. I always thought it just looked like if you think speedway's the maddest sport, I just think ice speedway just looks completely bonkers. You know, these big spikes in your tire. Well, what's that about? Anyway, you've got a great 1 to 7 there, James. Tell me, out of all that 7, who would your captain be?
It has to be Simon Wood, I think. I think it'd have to be him.
What about a team manager?
Has to be Lawrence Rogers. Completely different twist and everything. He was technically the person that discovered me. He gave me the chance to ride for the Coventry Vikings when they were about, and then I rode for the Storms for a little while. And So he sort of really started my Speedway career off for me, and now to be sort of back with him with Birmingham, and he's made Birmingham a second home for me now. So he's a great team manager, a great person, and he really does have each rider's personal like he looks out for you personally if you're going through something, and he will do anything he can to help you, and he cares about you as a person. So yeah, he's a great bloke and a real good team manager.
And what would you call your team? What would your team name be?
Has to be Smiley Racing, really, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that was an easy one for him.
Yeah, it has to be. Can't be anything else, really.
Is that your nickname then?
Yeah. It all came about with when my dad met my mum back in the days of Levers. Was about in the 80s. It was a thing to have a cartoon character, and Mum said to Dad, "If you put a smiley face on your suit, I'll clean it for you." So he did, and it's stuck ever since. When I first started, I had a smiley put on my suit exactly the same place, and it's been on every suit I've had since. So yeah,
a family tradition.
Yeah, and it will stay hopefully forever.
I know your partner's there. I was just going to say, when your kids come along, James, I'm sure.
I've already said to that person to get a smiley face and put on a bike.
Don't want to be starting a domestic. So you've got Heat 15 then, James. It's the last heat decider. We need two of your team to go out there and do the business. Who do you pick?
Oh, that's a real tough choice, really. I think I'd have to say Simon Wigg and Peter Collins. I think Wiggy wasn't one that he didn't miss many starts, and Peter Collins is got his teeth sunk in. He would do anything he could to win a race. So I think I'd have to choose them two, really.
Brilliant. The thing is, you'd have to get Peter Collins to sign for you first, because he only rode for Bellevue, didn't he?
Yeah, that might be a challenge.
Okay, we've got 10.
I'll see him on twist his arm.
Yeah. We've got 10 quick-fire questions for you, James. Let's start with number 1. When were you last on a Speedway bike?
I wrote this down because I wouldn't remember. Last time I was on a Speedway bike was Plymouth, just before the GP started. I couldn't tell you when it was, but that was the last time I've ridden my Speedway bike properly.
Do you have a lucky or favourite helmet colour?
Not really. I mean, in England, I ride a lot with a black and white one on to protect my helmet. So I think every Master I've won, I've had a yellow, a white and black helmet colour on. So probably have to say that one.
The next question is your favourite gate to go from. I suppose it depends whether it's Speedway and it's 1 to 4 or it's grasstrack and it's 1 to 12.
Yeah, it does. A lot of it depends on what the track is. I mean, I do love a good inside gate, shove one out the way and off you go. But you can't beat a feeling of coming off the outside gate and sort of getting across all of them, or just going for the high, wide and handsome, and everyone's turned left and you're still going straight around the outside. That's you can't be that sort of feeling. So probably have to say one of the outer gates, just for the the thing. If you can get across everyone, it's just sort of stamps your whole race. Yeah.
Tea or coffee?
Tea, 100% tea.
Okay, if you weren't a Speedway rider, what would you be doing? What job would you be doing?
Don't know. I'm a level 2 qualified mechanic, and I drive lorries now as well. So probably something to do with that, either driving lorries or fixing cars.
Well, if you're ever looking for a job, come and see me at Arnold Clark, mate.
Do
you have a favourite pastime or hobby?
I enjoy going out for a cycle. A nice early morning cycle, whether it's up the woods or sort of around the country roads around it. I do enjoy doing that.
Okay, and what is your favourite film?
Top Gun. Love Top Gun.
Would it be a race suit or a race jacket? What's your preference?
I have to admit, race suits, like team suits, do look nice. Like the whole team in matching suits does look really nice. But I do like the old school sort of just the bib, because then each rider's got their own sort of like personal touch to it. So yeah, it depends what sort of image you want, really.
And finally, well, not finally, penultimately, what's the worst thing about Speedway?
We'll be careful. The politics, I think, at the minute. It's kind of overrun the sport. There's a lot of politics and a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that maybe fans don't necessarily realise that things we have to do, and things we can't say and have to say and all this sort of stuff. So I'll probably have to say that.
And the best thing about Speedway?
Family. The family feeling from your teammates, or the riders, to the fans. It's all just one big family. You can ring anyone up at a time of need and everyone does anything they can to help. So
brilliant.
I love that.
James, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Absolutely fantastic.
For that, it's been brilliant listening to you 1 to 7. We've got a few names in there that we haven't heard so far, and it's great for a young guy like yourself not to be all about the here and now. You're looking at the past, where the sport came from as well. So that was quite refreshing, and thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, Liam and I will be back soon with another episode of Super 7, where we'll have a former or current rider who will tell us who his ultimate dream team is. Thanks for watching.